Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sree's daily global COVID-19 show. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and it's my honor to convene this daily conversation around various aspects of the COVID-19 crisis and everything that's happening in the news. We're doing a series that we call the Stony Brook Journalism Episodes. My students at Stony Brook School of Journalism are producing several episodes of the show as part of their Digital Innovations in Journalism course that I teach. Tonight, the episode is produced by Kelly Alvarado, Cameron Albert, Jhonatan Bonilla, and Niki Nassiri. Kelly and Niki will be with us as co-hosts, and you'll meet them in just a minute. Our topic tonight is Indigenous Wildfire Strategy, to understand what's been happening with the terrible wildfires out west. And we will have folks who can tell us how Native American tribes and people and individuals are handling the fires, and also what can be done to make the situation better for everyone involved. We'll have two guests with us. Daniel Wildcat is a professor at Haskell Indian Nations University, co-director of the Haskell Environmental Research Studies Center, and Bill Tripp, Director of Natural Resources and Environmental Policy at the Karuk Tribe Department of Natural Resources. Bill is on Twitter. He's at Cultural Fire. So please do follow him, and you'll meet Bill and the professor in a few minutes. Hello, everyone. I'm Sree. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for all your support of this show. I'm the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at Stony Brook School of Journalism and the co-founder of Digimentors, a social, digital, and virtual events consulting company. We are so grateful that you're watching us. Hope you will tag us right now and tag your friends so they can watch live. We're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So if you tag your friends on any of these platforms or hit reshare or hit retweet, then your friends can watch now or later. We want to tell you a little bit about the show. In our first 215 episodes, we've had more than 1 million viewers and 156 million social impressions, 386 guests, 68 from 68 cities and 20 countries, including the chief scientist of the World Health Organization. We are so grateful to all of you for watching. You can also subscribe and see the archives at youtube.com/Sreenet. We are in partnership with Scroll Global and Scroll.in. Our producers are Rose Horowitz at Rose Horowitz 31 and Vandana Menon, Vandana_Menon. We're also grateful to our sponsors who make all of this possible. So are you ready to talk about this important topic and to understand what's happening? Please tell us where you're watching from, and please post your questions so that our guests can answer them. So first, let me bring on our student co-hosts who will talk to me for a minute, and then we'll bring on our guests. So let me say hello to Niki and Kelly. Hi, folks.
Hi, Professor.
Great to see you. Tell me how you're doing and how you came up with this topic, and what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yeah, so it was kind of a group effort. We really thought this was an important topic, and Indigenous Peoples Day just passed, so we thought it was pretty timely too. And yeah, we just thought it was a really important conversation that needed to be had. And yeah, that's how we chose it together. And I'm also doing good. If
and where are you, Kelly?
I'm in Deer Park, Long Island.
Okay.
Currently in my mom's basement.
Okay, I can see that, but it's a nice basement, so that's good. Let's go to Niki. Niki, where are you?
Hi, I'm in East Setauket, Long Island, just 10 minutes away from Stony Brook University.
All right. So are you ready to bring on Bill Tripp, who's going to talk to us? And we'll go from there. So let's first say hello to Bill. Hi, Bill.
Hi, how you doing?
Thank you for being here. You're near the Oregon border of California. My first question to you is, how are you? Where exactly are you? And how's your family been handling the pandemic? We'll talk about the fires and everything else.
I'm doing okay. I'm in the extreme northwestern part of California, just over the first mountain range from the coast in the Klamath River Basin. And yeah, this pandemic has really been something. It's ever since going into shelter in place so many months ago. We're still kind of in that mode, except for I'm back in the office now. But yeah, I'm a little bit of an introvert naturally, so it doesn't affect me as so bad as probably does some others.
Well, we're going to find out all about your job and how you do it. And I'm sure you love being out in the forest and in nature rather than in the office talking to us. So we're very grateful to you for being with us here tonight. I'm going to turn this over to my fabulous students who are going to be in charge of the questions for a little while, and then I'll come back. So thank you, Kelly and Niki, and I'm going to step aside right now.
All right, so let's get started. So Bill, could you tell us a little bit about your job and what you do every day?
Well, I'm the Director of Natural Resources and Environmental Policy for the Karuk Tribe's Department of Natural Resources. I've only been in this position for a couple of months, and so I'm in transition. For quite a few years, I've been the Deputy Director of Ecocultural Revitalization for the Department of Natural Resources, and my primary focus was in the realm of fire and environmental education, workforce development strategies, food security, food sovereignty, collaborative stewardship, and kind of that realm. A little bit of K through 12 environmental education, but now I have a broader focus that I'm still kind of reeling to catch up with. But a good portion of the summer, I've been kind of all consumed by COVID-19 response and later on the response to one of the large wildfire incidents in our Aboriginal territory.
Yeah, so how is that being out in the field trying to control that?
Well, it's been an interesting emergency assignment, really. I did most of my engagement remotely this time. I'm used to being right in fire camp, working with the incident commanders and the fire behavior analysts and the operations folks and the planning folks to consult on all of the details around how the incident is managed, and make sure that we're protecting our cultural resources within our territory. But it's been interesting trying to work remotely. I've got my computer open, and so I have a lot of distraction there. But then I'm also not able to engage that well. And so, but we've developed a really good team on the in partnership with the Six Rivers National Forests Heritage Resource Program staff, and so they've been used to working together for a few years, and so that's really helped. We've been able to have morning calls and talk over issues, and then they can get a day, the ones that go out in the field, and make sure that things are protected. And we've been able to go an extra step in getting more ceremonial leaders and cultural practitioners involved early on to make sure that people with local specific knowledge are able to identify those things and make sure they're protected as well.
So for the people at home that may not know how controlled fires work, can you explain that a little bit for us?
So there's a couple of distinctions. A lot of people call them controlled burns. Some people call them prescribed fires. And there's cultural burns. I've always I was taught that you really, as a human in this world, not really can control very much, and if you want to think you are, then you're probably gonna get proven different eventually. And so I don't like to claim that anybody can actually be in control of anything, especially fire. With a prescribed fire, you typically go out there and you cut a fire line like you would with a fire suppression effort. And except for in a suppression mode, you're cutting a fire line and burning out away from it. Whereas in a prescribed fire, you're cutting a fire line and you're burning inside that burn, confining it to a known space. And so, there's a lot of fire trucks and hand tools and no mechs and personal protective equipment involved. A lot of regimented training that you have to go through to be able to lead or even participate in such a thing. With cultural burning, it's I view that as having some distinctions that are worth noting. Our people burned in this place for millennia, and worked with the weather and the conditions on the ground and the sequencing of our actions to be able to do this without leather boots with vibram soles and all this fancy stuff we have today. Using moisture gradients and just knowing, sometimes it's just the smell in the air tells you it's time to light this fire in this place, and it's not going to go anywhere, and other than right there where you want it to stay. And so yeah, I mean there's a whole lot to it, but that's a quick summary, I guess, of the differences.
So how does cultural fires prevent mega fires from happening? Like, how would it help California and what they're dealing with right now?
Well, it becomes a matter of scale. If we're thinking we're going to go out and burn 400 acres a year and have on a 1.2 million acre landscape, and think we're going to make any difference, we're fooling ourselves. We've really got to think quite a bit bigger than that, and we've got to figure out how to do that together. None of us can do it alone. If the agencies that are responsible for suppressing fires think that they're going to be the ones that are going to do it all, then they're going to quickly find that there's no way that they can do it all, because they're going to be suppressing fires in Southern California when we need to be lighting fires in Northern California, and so people are already learning that. But when you go through and do a prescribed burn, you get to pick what conditions you're gonna burn in, and so if we can get to the point to where we can go out here and actually take advantage of some of these large fires that just happened, some of which have actually had some benefits in reducing the fuels and happened during weather conditions that actually produced surprisingly beneficial results. Of course, the ones that happened during those major wind events, like the Slater fire that burned, grew like 90,000 acres in a 12-hour period and burned down 50% of Happy Camp. It's the fire that burns in those windows of time that are just horribly devastating. And so if we could get out into those places, we know that the winds out of the northeast that come with high pressure systems are as we move into fall, we know that those conditions are the high probability, high impact event. And so if we can get out there and start to reinitiate this patchwork of burning, we used to do as indigenous, being indigenous to place, then we can have areas where lightning fires bump into that don't for enough fuel to build up heat and build up enough flames to spot 2 miles out and start just this massive area that's igniting all at once and just growing uncontrollably.
So on the side, we were just sharing your article, Our Land Was Taken, but we still hold the knowledge of how to stop megafires. Can you tell us what pushed you to write that article?
Well, I got a phone call asking if I would be interviewed by The Guardian about my experiences with fire, and it had just so happened I just got done with a 14-day assignment on the red salmon complex in the Trinity Alps wilderness, and I was a little bit frustrated because with COVID-19, all of the work we've done to kind of start to change the paradigm to be able to use fire the right way and herd fire around and put fire into places to cut the fire progression off and all of these things, managing intensities and how it burns. That this year was no longer the type of a thing that was in the Forest Service's decision space. And so they were told, you're not going to get any people unless you do a full-on suppression strategy. Well, the area where the red salmon complex was burning, this is the 4th event that has happened up there in the past 21 years. With an average cost of $61 million a piece at that time. That average has now gone up. I was frustrated by just the way things were going on and my inability to really engage due to COVID-19 and was doing everything remotely, and so I started to put together a 2,000 word blog that I was gonna try to get published, that was talking about the ironies of the situation, with red cap, the red salmon and red cap creek and salmon summit and our staple food sources and all these things, and just the ironies of just the name alone and what it does to indigenous peoples, what this whole question has done to our people in this place. It just became an emotional flood of just conversation topics, and so I put it down into basically a 2,000 word rant that I was planning on adjusting later when I calmed down. And when I got the call about being interviewed, I said, well, maybe something like this. And so I sent them my rant, and they said, wow, there's really something here. I don't think I can do this justice with just an interview. And so they asked me if I would submit an op-ed and knock it down to about 1,000 words. And so, a lot of that emotion and a lot of the ironies and some of those other details, had to be removed to get it knocked down to that 1,000 words. But overall, I think it turned out to be a really great piece, and they said it got more attention than any other thing that they published on the fire so far.
Wow. So how do these fires work? Like, how does it start, and how do you ensure that it stays like somewhat controlled and burning where you want it to?
What's that again?
So how do you like basically control these fires and like make sure it doesn't go farther than where you want it to?
Well, these days they go out there with bulldozers and fire trucks and hand crews and put big old fire lines in, and a lot of these places, this is such rugged mountainous country, that a lot of these places go through sacred places that are sacred to the Karuk people, and get impacted. And so traditionally, we didn't have any of those things, and so we did it with fire. We would go out there and we would have somebody that would be out there, hunting or something, or making their prayers, up in some of those places is like our cathedral or our church, and where we go to make our prayers and those types of things. And so, some of these places that we call prayer seats are out there on these ridge systems that we've had intentionally damaged before during fire events, because we identified where they were. But it's really hard to talk about, because when you let people know where things are, sometimes you never know if someone's going to just go damage it because they know now, or if they're actually going to protect it. And so we try to weigh that balance. But we would historically be using these prayer seats to sit there and watch and pray and wait for our indicators, and reflect on the world and life and everything our people need, and that the world needs. And when those indicators showed themselves, we would light the fire, and it would, and then the weather changes and the conditions are right, and things burn into a weather event and go out. And so you do that across the landscape on these ridge systems on a reasonable rotation. Then when lightning fires occur, there's no fuel to burn when it hits the ridge. And so it's the same concept of putting in a 3-blade wide dozer line. There's no fuel. Well, this is a whole upper third slope with no fuel. And so even a wind event isn't going to stop, a dozer line isn't going to stop it from a wind event. But a large, 10,000 acre burn that just happened a year ago will. And so, our current practices are failing. Well, at least the current practices that are being employed for fire suppression are failing. And so being able to use for enabling us to revitalize our indigenous practices, I believe is the future solution that we need to start integrating into our working relationships.
So what are some of the hurdles between like your tribe and California state between integrating your traditional practices into this larger program?
Well, that's a tough one. Being raised in my ancestral village of Karuk down there on the Salmon River, in the same place that we've been for millennia, and watching and growing up without any real neighbors, and just really growing up in in the continuum of our indigenous knowledge, practice, and belief systems, coming out and seeing the world as it really is after growing up like that is difficult. It doesn't leave a lot of room for trust. That integration doesn't mean taking the next thing away. And so sometimes it makes it hard to even talk in public about these things because, a lot of people say, oh, well, we want to see a knowledge transfer. Well, yeah, that knowledge transfer is from the people whose land you stole to the people who stole it so they can do what they believe is right and throw away what they believe is wrong and use it for their own economic self-interest. I get hung up on words sometimes, but I think it's when I say integration, I really mean us all working together and revitalizing our indigenous place under our indigenous authorities as sovereigns in our territorial homelands.
So have your tribes done cultural burnings like throughout your lives? Like, have you done it while you were younger too?
How do I know? Oh, can you repeat that again?
Sorry. So I just wanted to know if you have done like cultural burnings throughout your life. Like, have you started at a young age or anything?
Yeah, when I was 4 years old, I was sitting by the stove waiting for my great grandmother to wake up, and I was cracking acorns and probably not being quite as quiet as I thought I was. I was cracking acorns; it's quite loud. But it's kind of chilly, so I was sitting there by the stove, and I thought I'd start a fire so she'd be warm when she woke up, and so she was over 100 years old at the time, and a full-blooded Karuk, and she came out and saw me trying to build that fire, and she told me, she said that if I was going to be playing with fire, then I'm going to do something good with it, and so she took me out under the black oak leaves up in the hazel patch, and told me to handed me a box of stick matches and said burn the line from there to there. And it took me that whole box of matches and just to get there, but I did it, and it took a good part of the day just laying there on my stomach, rearranging the fuels and trying to figure out how to light things in a different pattern to where they would actually draw themselves together, because I just didn't have enough resources to actually take it from here to here in its current condition without rearranging things. And so it was a really interesting first lesson in fire because I was actually able to understand what it is and how it behaves with its environment on a micro scale. And so that started my education about all of our creation stories and things that at first sometimes seem like just a bunch of animals doing funny things, but as you grow up, those lessons come back to you in your practice. And so we talk about revitalizing indigenous knowledge or transferring indigenous knowledge. It's not necessarily possible. These things come out of they're born in practice, and they don't continue without practice. And so I guess I've been fortunate enough to be one of the few that got some of those stories as a young person. There are people all across the country that there are a lot of indigenous peoples that have people in the same situation, or they have people that have had this information passed on. And if those people are enabled to put this back into practice, then they can start pulling the lessons back out of it. I think that we're in a time when that's really super hypercritical that we go there.
Can you tell us a little bit more about fire's cultural significance?
Well, in Karuk culture, it's it's central to a lot of things. We burn for a lot of different reasons. Both sacred and utilitarian. And so, we use it for heating, we use it for cooking. It's like that. Really, our life depends on it, and at the most foundational level. And I don't think that that's true only for Karuk people. I think that's for humans. We may use fire in an electric stove now, but it's still the same thing, right? We need that heat. We need something that does that in our lives, and so it's I think it's one of the most foundational elements that we've been as humans put in a position to build a relationship with. For going back farther than anyone can probably recall or even find in any kind of a scientific record. So but aside from the utilitarian burning for our for enhancing our traditional food, fiber and medicinal resources, and enhancing hunting success and all of these keeping balance in the ecosystem, food webs in the ecosystem, and all these things. We also have ceremonial burning practices that are supposed to serve as our reminder of what we're supposed to be doing as humans. And so there's one short story I like to call back on that I've actually had to get permission to tell, because it's one of those things that's part of our annual world renewal ceremonies, and some of these things aren't necessarily entirely for the public, even within the tribe to know. But a ceremonial leader determined that this in particular thing was something it was time to start talking about. And so there's a day during our world renewal ceremonies down at a place we call Tishonic in Orleans. It's at the mouth of Camp Creek, where our Fatoenan, or I guess you'd call it sometimes we refer to it as a world renewal priest. I guess it's one that walks the trails and does that thing for us that nobody, not everyone really knows. And so he does a belly flop, and so this belly flop is supposed to make a lot of noise. And that noise represents the clap of thunder, lightning strikes, and so that creates a ripple that goes down from the mouth of the Klamath River, or from the mouth of goes down the Klamath River from the mouth of Camp Creek. And so that ripple is supposed to carry a prayer to bring the salmon up the river. Well, this happens on a certain day. Around the full moon in August, so it's in summer. It's in the middle of fire season, and at the same time that belly flop occurs, the same indicator that person watches for is something that person at the top of Black Mountain, at the headwaters of Camp Creek, can key in on. So at the exact same time that belly flop happens and that loud noise happens, a fire's lit on the top of the mountain. And so, you look at the dynamics of fire on the landscape and what it does. It tells a really interesting story that takes the metaphysical and blends it with the biophysical and shows you how a traditional knowledge, practice, and belief system works in indigenous peoples. And so, you look at what fire does. It burns the small vegetation. It burns the leaves. It burns the things that use the water that's close to the surface of the earth, the soil moisture. And then you look at what it also does. It produces smoke. Well, what does smoke do? Smoke interacts with the trees. So trees breathe, over a 24-hour period or whatever, and they take in carbon dioxide and they let out oxygen. And so at night, when the smoke settles into where the canopy of the trees are, it's the same time when they're taking in the carbon, right? And so, but with the smoke, there's carbon, but there's also particulates. And so the particulates get in there and they clog some of the holes. Well, when the trees pulling up the water up at night and distributing it at the surface level, bringing up that soil moisture so the tree can use it during the day, the tree doesn't need as much because it isn't evapotranspirating as much water anymore because of the smoke and the clogged stomatas and all that other kind of stuff. And so, so that whole hydraulic redistribution process occurs, but the evapotranspiration decreases, and so your soil moistures increase, your surface fuel moistures increase. There more water is allowed to, which then hampers fire behavior, and then more water goes down into your stream, and your diurnal fluctuation in your stream would then change, creating a ripple coming out of the mouth of Camp Creek, which and then that combined with the smoke shading the river and cooling the river temperature would then change the dynamics of the stream just enough to cue the salmon to come into the river and come up spawn. And so, it doesn't take, it's those kind of things that have happened here for thousands and thousands of years that we really, really want to see returned to our people.
So there has been a lot of cultural ties for the controlled burns. And I know that there has been some backlash of these fires. So how has this led to cultural suppression?
Well, our culture has been suppressed since, well, I don't even know when to put an exact date on it, since European contact, I guess. And maybe even prior to that, they say the disease hit pretty hard even before European contact occurred. But there's actually some interesting stuff that they found in the fire record, looking at tree fire scars in trees, and looking at pollen and charcoal in lake sediments. That fire behaved the same through changes in climate coming out of the last ice age. And when the climate shifts alone should have moved the forest to a conifer-dominated forest, the forest instead shifted to a oak-dominated forest, because that produces more food for people and wildlife, and it's a byproduct of the human relationship with fire. And so it proved an anthropogenic or an indigenous signal in the way fire behaved across the landscape. That was stable all the way up to the point in time when in the Central Sierras, the Spanish showed up. Then there was a marked change. And so it's human behavior has changed this thing. And here it's a little bit different. Where we're at, it wasn't the Spanish that showed up, it was the Hudson Bay fur traders. So there's about a 40-year difference there, which then just makes it even more sound as far as a scientific study goes. But there was another change during the gold rush, and then another change when fire suppression policy began. And so it's looking back into that study alone, a person can say that there was probably an impact on cultural uses of fire when European contact came into place, but that was because more people were adopting or I guess appropriating the concepts of indigenous use of fire for other reasons, like cattle grazing and things like that. And so the fire was a little different, and it created different feedback loops. And then gold rush, there was different reasons why people burned off fire, so they can see the different minerals in the ground, or whatever reason they did it. It was different. But then once the fire suppression era started, it just that bar graph took it right down to almost nothing until the point to where fuels were built up so much that it just then took a curve, like just straight up off the charts. And so yeah, I think that the cultural uses of fire were co-opted and changed a little bit before they actually ended up being suppressed with the wholesale exclusion of fire, with the creation of the national forest system and the 10 a.m. policy.
So a lot of people at home, they've just been learning about these practices through social media and sharing online. So is there any way for just anyone that is in the US to help you in any way?
Yeah. We're having a really hard time maintaining our capacity to stay in this discussion. And so one of the things that we've done is that we've started to build this endowment for ecocultural revitalization, and we've started to work with state and federal agencies to create funding sources and to develop partnerships, and so we can all start working together on this stuff. But that's the issue with colonialism is that we're currently in the neo-colonial phase, which maintains control of the colonized population because they control the financial systems that would enable indigenous peoples to have any kind of livelihood. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. And so we're thinking that if we can build an endowment fund that can give us, enough resources to say, hey, here's our $2 or $3 million a year, then where's your $2 or $3 million a year? And then we're all coming together on an equal playing field and just doing great things together. And so we do have a click and pledge link that we send around for some of our endowment building efforts, and those are on my Twitter feed and those types of things.
Hi, I'm sorry to step in. This is such a great conversation, and I've learned so much as has our audience. Wanted to just before we wrap up, Bill, if you can give us a couple of ideas for people who want to help. One would be, of course, to support the fund that you're raising money for. So everyone, please follow Bill at Cultural Fire. But anything else that we should know, people who may have missed any part of this conversation? What are things that you wish everybody knew?
Well, I wish everybody knew the importance of taking a socio-ecological resilience first approach to this discussion. A lot of folks go straight to the economic aspects, and there's I think if people knew more about the food web ecology out there in the ecosystems and how species can have these boom and bust population crashes as conditions change. If people truly understood how that all works and how their relationship with fire could help maintain the balance for all to thrive, I think that we would all start moving to a pretty good place in this discussion.
Thank you very much. Let's go to our students and have them reflect on this conversation. Niki, first you.
Yeah, so I definitely learned so much, and thank you so much for sharing those beautiful stories with us. I feel so lucky to have heard them.
Thank you.
I wish Daniel was on. I was excited to see that he was part of this.
So we'll have to bring him on another time. We're not sure, but we'll ask him to come to join us again. Let's go to Kelly.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. And it was so nice to have this conversation. Yeah, like Niki said, I was really excited to hear all your stories that you've had. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can you tell us about the stones that are behind you on the windowsill?
Oh, the previous director left them here. They're just some tools. One's a firecracked rock, and the other ones are just some tools. But this one here is one that was given to me by a council member because I needed to be a little bolder in what I do. So I keep it there to remind me to keep talking to folks.
Well, you're very kind to have spent all this time with us. What is your message for folks who aren't paying enough attention to Native American issues, including us? I've got to say, I've done 200 episodes. We've done one other episode about Native Americans. What is your message to the media and to the public that doesn't pay enough attention?
Well, I think when people say that Indigenous peoples are a forgotten race, I think that's entirely true. I've been working for about 27 years at the Department of Natural Resources here, and as a blonde Indigenous person, I've been in the middle of rooms that people didn't think there was an Indigenous voice, and heard some crazy things, very upsetting things. But what's even more shocking is that you can talk to people in most places in this country, and bring up the fact that there are tribes that need to be part of the discussion and this and that, and they'll be quick to agree, but then they'll get into a conversation 2 minutes later and say, yeah, we need to engage Fed states and NGOs. It's like, well, you just forgot tribes again, and we just talked about this 2 minutes ago. And I think that people just, the education systems in America, which is one of the reasons why I was so excited about Daniel Wildcat being on here, is is they just have that so deeply ingrained in today's society that Native Americans are a part of history, not a part of the current dialogue. It's going to take a lot of work for people to bring that to the forefront of their minds.
Well, we promise on this show to do more about this topic of Native Americans and how we can pay more attention. And we're very grateful to you for your time, and I'm grateful to my students for having organized this, and the fact that they're paying attention matters. So thank you very much, and we want to thank our audience. We'll be back tomorrow night with another episode at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And thank you to Bill, and thank you to our students for all the work they put in. Jhonatan is in the background. Jhonatan and Cameron in the background as producers, and our co-hosts, Niki and Kelly. So thanks very much, everybody. And everyone, please follow Bill. He's on Twitter. You can find him on Twitter as Cultural Fire, at Cultural Fire. Kelly is Kelly ALV4, and Niki is Niki Reports. So thanks very much, everybody, and we'll say goodbye.